What another fun, awesome opportunity we've got today to talk a little Duke men's basketball recruiting with my pal Jason Jordan. Recruiting lookbacks have been a really fun segment for us to have here on Locked On Blue Devils as letter of intents are being turned in for the class of 2023. Let's go back nearly a decade. The class that delivered a national title to Duke in Durham, the high school basketball class of 2014 is featured on this episode of Locked On Blue Devils. Let's get right to it.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. It's so great to have you here with us on this Monday, November 14th, 2022. My name is JJ Jackson, and I'm so grateful you're along for the ride here today on Locked On Blue Devils. If you haven't done so already, please be sure to subscribe and follow this podcast for free wherever you get your podcast. The only daily podcast devoted to the life of Duke athletics is Locked On Blue Devils. We bring you amazing content each and every day. Also, be sure to watch the show and subscribe on YouTube. Your support means the absolute world, so make sure you take some time to help us out in that regard. Follow us on Twitter at LO_Blue Devils, and you can follow me on Twitter at _JJ_Jackson_. On today's show, we've got another Duke recruiting look back. This is the time of year where we're seeing letter of intents being turned in for Duke men's basketball. Why not continue to look back at the successful recruiting classes that Duke has had over the years? And we go back to the class of 2014 coming out of high school that went on to deliver a national title for Duke on today's show. And joining us for the conversation today is my very good pal, Jason Jordan, the director of college basketball recruiting for Sports Illustrated, here to look back one more time with us. Jason, thanks for the time as always. And look, anytime you've got a recruiting class that was able to deliver in the way in which this 2014 one did, it's a fun conversation for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you're probably almost never able to say that the class exceeds the expectations and goes ahead and wins the title. So for them to be able to get that done, I think it's understated how special that class was and what they were able to do. So big time for sure.
Yeah, able to deliver a national championship. So we got to get right to it. And of course, talking about college football and college basketball recruiting, we'd like to thank LinkedIn Jobs for being the official partner of such and sponsor of such here on the Locked On Network. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. So this class for Duke features Tyus Jones, Jahlil Okafor, Justise Winslow, and Grayson Allen. I think we start with the two guys at top, Jason, because going into their college basketball recruitment, the biggest story that was out there is that those two guys in particular, Tyus Jones and Jahlil Okafor, wanted to play together. What do you remember about that?
Well, I remember I did the story about that that summer or spring or something when it was starting to buzz a little bit. Debbie, good people, great friend. I've known her for years. Tyus's mom and Jahlil's pops. You know, they would say that, oh yeah, our parents, when they would say, oh, we think about playing together. And at first it was like a thought, and it's like a lot of recruits say that even to this day. I was like, yeah, okay. And then it was consistent. Then they would start to say our parents are talking, and so then I would talk to the parents, and Chuck and Debbie would be like, yeah, we had a conversation, and yeah, and it was becoming more and more real, and so I would see how intense the conversations were in the back channels, and it was like, oh, so they're gonna do it. Oh, okay, got it. Wow, that's insane. So it came down to a point where it was like, no, it's really gonna happen, and it was like process of elimination. Who's on them both the hard, you know what I mean? And so that was always fun to try and piece those two things together. But Jahlil and Tyus were both bloggers of mine for a couple years each. And so, yeah, they just grew their bond, on the circuit. And I think they're very close to this day.
Yeah, we talked about, the momentum that Duke had gotten in recent years. If we go back in time to a high school class of 2014, remember they've already seen Kyrie Irving and Austin Rivers and Jabari Parker walk through the door as freshmen who have gone on and played 1 year of college basketball and been selected really high in the NBA draft. Did it feel inevitable, Jason, looking back on it, that Duke would end up being the school, or were there any other big players that you remember?
Yeah, I think it was a foregone conclusion on most people's minds that they would ultimately win out. I mean, I never felt like, again, I talked to them a lot, so I don't know if maybe my conversations were a little bit, when the recorder went off, I felt like I knew, you could get the sense just in talking to the parents and then Ja and Tyus. But yeah, I never where I sometimes I'm really puzzled. I'm not trying to say I know everything. Sometimes I'm really like, this guy's good, poker face extraordinaire. And these guys had a good poker face, but yeah, I don't think they were. I think they were always going to do.
And you got to imagine they complement each other so well, because you talk about the fact that when guys do want to team up, possibly there could be a fear of stealing playing time and spotlights from one another. But what's a good big man if he doesn't have a good point guard to deliver the basketball to, and vice versa? What's a good point guard if he doesn't have the big man to run and pick and roll and that sort of thing? And here you are with this great combination of Tyus and Jahlil teaming up together.
Yeah, and then the way they play too, like Tyus, obviously a great scorer, especially even in high school when he was playing with Howard Pulley. But he liked to pass, like he liked to run the show, and he would make the big shot. I mean, I think y'all remember the big shot he made in that title game. But he liked to distribute. He liked to be known for being like a distributor and a guy who would lead the EYBL in assists. He wanted that, he wanted that jacket. And then you have Jahlil, who was just a mammoth. I mean, he just overpowered everybody. He had great footwork. I remember that summer he rolled his ankle a few times, and so he would roll his ankle a lot. I remember that. But when he played, he was literally. I mean, and he played with, oh man, what's the kid's name? He was in Chicago too. He played at Cary High School. Oh man, I can see him and everything. But he played in an era when there were other big boys there that were formidable, but he was just better than everybody else, So, and it made sense. Like, so you want to, as a big who is going to be a big, not these new guys, no offense, but a guy who's going to stay in the paint, you want a great point guard. And why not get why doesn't the number one center want the number one point guard to play with him, who wants to pass the ball and be known as the lead assist guy in the country? So yeah, it kind of made sense.
And we went on to see, even at their professional careers, which we'll talk about at some point, Tyus Jones continues to have multiple years running where he's right there at the top of the entire league in assist to turnover ratio. Like, he wants to share the rock and he wants to take care of the basketball as well. And that's exactly what we saw him do at Duke. All right, there's a couple of more members of this recruiting class that we want to be sure we give some love to, and we'll do that as we continue moving forward here on this Monday edition of Locked On Blue Devils. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at Upside. Inflation has us all thinking about different ways to cut back, whether it's driving less, dining out less, or buying less from the grocery store. We can all agree there's nothing fun about less. That's why I started using Upside. Upside is an incredible app for anyone who buys gas, groceries, or dines out. With Upside, I don't have to cut back because I get cash back on every purchase. To get started, download the free Upside app, use my promo code LOCKED, LOCKED, and get $5 or more cash back on your first purchase of $10 or more. Next, claim an offer for whatever you're buying on Upside, check in at the business, pay as usual for a credit or debit card, and get paid. Download the free Upside app and use promo code LOCKED, LOCKED, to get $5 or more cash back on your first purchase of $10 or more. Promo code LOCKED. Upside, a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. Moving forward here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils, I'm JJ Jackson alongside my buddy Jason Jordan, the director of college basketball recruiting for Sports Illustrated. That 2014 recruiting class for Duke featured the package deal in Jahlil Okafor and Tyus Jones. But a wing also wanted to join the party, and he comes out of the state of Texas. Justise Winslow decides to sign a letter of intent for Duke. What do you remember about Winslow coming out?
Yeah, I remember I remember when they set the date and Ja and Ty set the date. It was already kind of catching on that, Justise could be a part of that too. And then I remember when they committed, I think Justise was like a week after them or something like that. But he announced I'm committing. And so when that happened, everybody was like, oh my God. Oh my God. So, he's definitely was part of that package. So it was like, people forget, it was like it did start with John Tyus, but they were all part of USA Basketball. And so they formed a bond there. And those three, it was kind of a three-way in the end. I think it started with them two. And then I remember Chuck and they were really lobbying for Justise. And they got 7 days later. I think it was literally 7 days later that he committed to Duke. And it was kind of like, as much as I think Ja ended up being the number one player in that class. Tyus was certainly the number one point guard. But, a lot of people, and I was one of them that, was like Justise could be he could be the X factor. He's the enforcer. He's a tough guy. He's a guy that does a whole lot of different things well at 6'5", 6'6", guards multiple positions, could be a lockdown defender on the perimeter. And so, and you see, he was that X factor on that team. He was the glue guy for me, at times the best player on the court. And, he's obviously thrived at the next level, but yeah, he definitely, I thought he was potentially the most important player in that class.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah.
Justise absolutely delivered, pun intended, for what he was able to do for Duke in that one season. They had that big Elite Eight game against Houston, where he's from. He hits a couple of big threes down the stretch for Duke on their way again to, of course, winning the national championship. What do you remember about his offensive game? I mean, a lot of talk about being a lefty out there, 6'6", good size, good frame. What do you remember about his offensive game?
Just that he did a lot of things really well. Like he knocked down shots. He would pick his spots really well. Like, so he recognized situations. So he was smart. So he wouldn't, he was a super athlete, as you obviously know. But he wasn't pressed to show that. I always thought that really stood out about him. Like he was more smart than he was looking for the wow play. So if it made more sense for him to stop at the mid range, he would pull up for the floater. He wasn't always trying to go down there and, make the wow play where he would miss the dunk but get the wow from the crowd. So he wasn't that guy. And so he would, and then, just I always loved his confidence. I mean, I know that he felt like he was always the best player on the court when he would play in the summer. Whether anybody else agreed or not, he felt that way. And that kind of came through in how he delivered and the way he was able to deliver in high school. And then it obviously translated into the next level. So that's why I was like, he's going to be the guy.
Yeah.
That just mentality wise, he's just so tough. Like he doesn't try to be tough. He's just tough, just naturally a tough kid. And Duke would not have won the national title without Justise. That's a fact.
So, yeah, no kidding. So we talk about Jahlil coming out of Chicago. We've got Tyus Jones from Minnesota. You've got Justise Winslow from Texas, kind of all over the place. And then the last member of that 2014 class that went on to have a full 4-year career at Duke and is both loved and absolutely hated by fans across college basketball is by way of Jacksonville, Florida. Grayson Allen comes onto the scene, the least heralded of the bunch. He played the fewest minutes of the four on that national title team. But tell me about a young Grayson Allen, Jason.
Now, I remember he played on the Each One Teach One team with D'Angelo Russell and Joel Berry.
Right.
So just imagine that three. That combination. Good gracious.
And I know his friendship with Joel Berry has been well documented with the Duke Carolina angle that goes with it and that sort of thing. Yeah. That's a good team.
Always really tough. He always played really tough. He I know people are gonna say he's a dirty player, but he wasn't that. But he was tough. Like he was scrappy. Just a guy who would really get after it. Always diving for the loose ball, that kind of thing. But super athletic. I mean, he was who you saw at Duke. Grayson was, especially on that each one teach one, because that was a traveling all-star team. The national title game where he really showed up, that was who he was in the summer and in high school full time.
Good point.
So that's when he really had his mind. What a time to have a moment, right?
Yeah.
So
no kidding.
He staked his claim as a Duke legend in that game. But that's who he was beforehand. Just an athlete who played interchangeably in the guard position. People thought he was a point guard. I never thought he was a point guard. But because he was always best when he was just being in attack mode, looking to score, looking to create opportunities for himself and his teammates. But always tough. He wanted all the smoke.
Yeah.
That was Grayson.
Super athletic, and we've seen in his professional career the last 2 years, he started at that 2-guard spot for the Milwaukee Bucks. Yeah. And you talk about that athleticism and the display he had in the title game after Duke wins the national championship, after it's Wisconsin that they don't play that undefeated Kentucky team that year. People knew, okay, well, Justise is going to be gone. Okafor is going to be a top 3 pick. Tyus Jones is likely out. And then all of a sudden, Jason, based off one game, Grayson Allen is getting like, wait, this guy could be a first-round pick. Like, maybe he should go. And then we kind of played that game with Grayson Allen for the next 4 years, and every year deciding to go back to Duke. But, yeah, I think people saw some game in him for quite some time.
Yeah, and obviously it's translated. As much as you hate Grayson Allen, I mean, he's been a productive NBA player. There's no way around it.
Yeah.
He's got a bright future. He's going to make a lot of money as an NBA player, so you can hate him all you want to, but
you shoot greater than 40% from 3 for any team, they're going to keep giving you paychecks.
They're definitely going to keep giving you a paycheck. So I think he's obviously carved out his niche. He's not tripping on being hated because he's living his dream.
Yes.
He's always been that kind of guy, though. Like I think people think that he's affected by that more than he is. Actually, and I think that's like a fan thing. Like I don't think he thinks about being hated. He's never come across as that kind of kid to me. Like, but I think, media and it's certainly fans are like, man, he probably still worries about tripping Xavier Ratton Mays and Florida State. Throwback name there. These guys don't think those guys are probably friends now, so that's a fan thing, and that's like an old wives' tale now, water under the bridge. Those guys don't really care.
People on YouTube can fact check me on this, but I want to say it was the player's name was Santa Ana that he tripped at Elon, and for whatever reason that name's just been ingrained in my memory ever since.
Now that said, he's tripped a couple people, so he definitely tripped X, because I know X at Cameron when they played Florida State. He certainly tripped him, or he grabbed his leg. The
whatever.
Whatever, man. Those guys they don't hold that stuff. None of them.
What a class! The class of 2014 for the Duke Blue Devils. We'll wrap up our conversation after this final timeout here today on the program. Locked On Blue Devils is brought to you by our friends over at Nissan. What an exciting opportunity we've got here with Nissan, as each and every week we're detailing the thrilling moment in college football. Brought to you by Nissan. The thrilling designs behind the new lineup from Nissan are intended to empower drivers in vehicles as capable as the driver themselves. When I think of unbelievable abilities on the football field for this week's thrilling moment, it's got to be this past week. Duke football, another win, knocking off Virginia Tech. The Blue Devils are now 7-game winners in this new season, which is so amazing to think about. The season has been outstanding, and Riley Leonard has delivered a lot of thrilling moments at that quarterback spot. This segment has been inspired by the thrilling new designs featured across Nissan's new lineup of vehicles. Pursue what thrills you in the all-new Frontier, Armada, or Pathfinder today, available now at NissanUSA.com. As we welcome you back into Locked On Blue Devils, JJ Jackson alongside my buddy Jason Jordan, the director of college basketball recruiting for Sports Illustrated. Busy time of year once again for you, Jason, as all these basketball players are having to turn in some letter of intents and declaring their 2023 decisions, right?
Yeah, man. It's winding down. We got another day or two in the early signing period. But yeah, they keep us on our toes for sure. I mean, it was DJ Wagner on Monday. It kind of came, last minute. But I get it. These kids want to get this thing over and done with, so they ain't got to keep answering the same $1 million question that they've been asked for the last year. So yeah, I completely understand, and I'm glad to get them off the board too.
Yeah.
As much as they're tired of answering these questions, we're tired of asking them. I think I can speak to those media guys, and fans want to know too. They're ready to move on, and they're ready to welcome you one way or the other.
And there's always, thankfully with what you do, it is not nearly as bad as in college football. One, just the sheer volume of recruiting that takes place in that sport. But fortunately, it just also doesn't feel like we see these crazy last minute, not to say it hasn't happened before, and it's going to happen again, Jason, but sheer volume, it's nowhere near college football, because even for a school like Duke, right? Last week we saw 4 of the 5 players turn in a letter of intent. We're waiting for Mackenzie Mbako and Simeon Wilcher to sign theirs at their school. And, there could be a moment of panic for Duke fans out there, like, whoa, why has it not been turned in as soon as it was able to be turned in? And as you well know, sometimes these guys just want their moments and whatever their schools have set up for them. Yeah,
definitely. And I think, the Duke can rest his. Mbako's good. He's definitely, they've got the assembly. They're doing their time. But I'll say this. I had that conversation the other day. Like, football is completely different. I mean, basketball, we're definitely easy like a Sunday morning. But I'll say this: coaches they do get a little edgy. It's like, okay, so Monday, did you want to do it the same day? It's like, no, we're gonna do it Wednesday. Well, okay, well, maybe you could go ahead and sign, but then do your you
ceremony.
Your ceremony thing, but go ahead and sign on the first. And I'll be honest with you, most of them do that. And so sometimes, and I'm not saying Mackenzie's done this, but a lot of times, 9 times out of 10, they go ahead and sign that first day, and the staff will honor and be like, yeah, we're not tripping. We're not gonna say you did it or you had your moment, and they will announce the day you do it. So rest assured, everybody will be where they're supposed to be.
Yeah,
and that's the beauty of basketball, right?
And now we see this amazing class of 2023 being put together for Duke, and the record is still yet to be written on what they could accomplish. But to bring our conversation full circle today, you kind of look at the recruiting classes for Duke men's basketball. I guess that class of 2014 kind of carries the cake, being the ones that delivered on a national championship.
Got to, man. You got to tip that's the measuring stick. Because if your goal is to get all these one and done kids, to get all these 5-star kids, and that's the lane you're in, and certainly that is the lane that the Dukies are in and have been in forever, then you got to produce titles. So you can. Oh man, we had a really good season. We went to the Sweet 16. Nope, not good enough. Yeah. Oh, we went to even the Final Four. Even last year, Coach K's Final Four. That sounds great, but they want that title, baby.
For sure.
So and Duke knows that. Obviously now Shire, well versed in that. He won one, so they know it's title or bust. And the recruits take that as like a call to action, and they love that. They're built for it, and that's why they come there. So they know that if they don't win, then they fail. And that sounds harsh.
Right.
And all that's we had a good season. No. They know they fail. And only one team can win, but at the end of the day, these are the best players on planet Earth. And that if you ask them, they'll tell you, like, nah, man, it's title or bust. That's the only thing we're worried about, the title.
In this one and done era, look, it's national titles to determine what recruiting class is the greatest for Duke. And it was the class of 2014 that delivered. John Shire, an assistant on that staff. Emil Jefferson started for that team and has a national championship, and now an assistant coach for the squad. So much fun. Jason, as always, an absolute pleasure to talk ball with you. Thanks for being on the program again.
I always love being here, man. Look forward to the next time.
That's my buddy Jason Jordan, the director of college basketball recruiting for Sports Illustrated, joining us here on today's show. What a fun conversation it was with him. And that's going to do it for our program today. We're back at it tomorrow. Big game tomorrow. Duke versus Kansas. A battle of top 10 teams, a marquee matchup here early in the year. We'll talk about it all coming up on tomorrow's show. That's going to do it for today's show. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you tomorrow. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.